All right, so my first question to you is, Mahi, what do you think of both the cars today? We've got the GLB and the EQB on stage.
Well, I've always been a SUV lover, again, I don't know if I'll be criticized for it, but there's some things you love and it's important to be upfront about it. And there's always a reason behind, I come from Ranchi, and a lot of times we are worried not only about the performance. Ground clearance is one of the things we Indians consider as, one of the most important things when it comes to any car. And also the stance on the road, in the sense, I always felt more comfortable driving an SUV because you are much higher from the ground, you have more visibility, you can always see what is happening in front of you. So I've always been a SUV fan, and coming to the cars, it's one of the biggest that Mercedes has to offer. It's a full 7-seater almost. And when it comes to the electric, I would like to drive it a bit more. It's very similar to the one that I already have, but it's a petrol engine. So when it comes to the performance, it's a Mercedes, so it will definitely perform. But it's always good to, feel it and then give a response about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you have been a successful captain. Would you say versatility has a key role to play in that, to be a good captain?
Well, I think it's a very important thing, but you can't really stop something with one word. So I've always felt adaptability is a key factor. And at the same time, what are the different kind of jobs that you can fulfill, and I think most of you are familiar with cricket, and we always crib about, oh, we don't have enough all-rounders. And what are all-rounders actually? There are people who can, who can bat, who can bowl, who can field, and all of that. So definitely when it comes to if it has to spill out of the cricketing field, I feel it's applicable everywhere. If you talk about cars, most of us talk about SUVs or different vehicles, but actually how many of us actually take it off-road? If we talk about percentage, if 100 people are buying SUVs, actually 99 of them, they don't really take it off-roading. But still, it's the aspect that is important, it's the aspect that they want, the space. They may use it once in 365 days, but they want the space. They want enough cargo space for the full family stuff to fit in, to move around freely, reliability and all of that. So it's an important thing when it comes to a car or a team, but I won't say it's the only thing, that is the most important one.
Now, do you go off-roading? Do you have a
Well, I do
destination?
because Ranchi, it's a plateau, so we have enough places where we can go off-roading, but not hardcore off-roading, because if you get stuck, then it's a trouble. So you don't really want to get stuck. You want to go off-roading, but it shouldn't be as if, it's too demanding and it's putting too much pressure on the car and the driving skill. More often than not, it's not the car that lets you down, it's actually the driver. Because they don't have much experience, they just dive in and then they realize, it's too much. They've taken a bigger bite than what they can chew.
Right. Now, I heard earlier that the first car you bought was a Mercedes-Benz. Tell us more about that.
It's a memory. It's not a very fond memory, not because of the car, but it was a GLS 63 AMG. One of my friends in Australia had it, so I came back and I ordered one from the UK. Yes, that was my first car. I've always been a G-Wagon fan, but with the GLS 63, it had the luxury and the performance, so it really pulled me over.
Now, is there another Mercedes-Benz car that you're eyeing next?
It's a G-Wagon, very plain and simple. If you talk about Mercedes, G-Wagon is one car that always comes to your mind. Yes, you have the Maybachs and everything, you have some of the best cars, but being an SUV lover, it's very difficult, if a G-Wagon is parked there, I'm not taking a step away from it and looking at something else, but it's a personal liking. And one of the reasons, if you see, it's one of the most produced cars. It has, if I'm not wrong, the production line runs on from, when it started. And I feel that in itself says a lot about the car. And, hopefully till they produce petrol engine cars, they'll keep producing it. And definitely there'll be an electric version. But electric version is still different. So, a G-Wagon with a proper petrol head, a V8 is what is needed.
Okay, all right. Now we're going to actually open up the audience for some questions.
Hi, Mahi.
Oh,
I want to ask, how long had you been dreaming to buy a Mercedes before you actually bought it?
Well, growing up, if you see, I was born in 81. I don't know how many people were born in 81, but growing up, the car that most of us wanted was a Mercedes because Mercedes dominated that full era. And then later on, the other car makers also started flowing in. They had their own versions of cars and everything. But somehow I've always been, my heart has always been towards Mercedes. Then I was traveling a lot, so there were other cars that were planned, and I realized that most of the cars that are in my garage have not even done 5,000 kilometers in, 7, 8 years. So, I was like, we need to take it slow. Then Ziva was born, so after 2 years, he started going to school, and that was the first time we actually got a Mercedes. It's not a very big one, so the roads are a bit narrow to the school, and she considers it her car. So often when I'm taking it to the stadium, you're like, Daddy, why are you taking my car? So actually it's strange, to answer your daughter as to why you're sharing her car. And a lot of times she refuses to take some other car. I don't know the reason behind it, maybe because 95% of the time she travels in that car, and most of her traveling is to the school and from the school. So very close, but now I'm getting something for myself at some point of time. And I'm hoping that, I'm not playing a lot of international cricket, so I'll get some time to use the car, so that I can do justice. Otherwise, it becomes the same. You have cars in the garage, but you're not actually using it, because one of my daily trips is actually in a motorcycle. If I don't have a kit bag with me, I ride my motorcycle. So evening, if I'm going to the gym or if I'm going for practice with kit bag, that's the time the car comes in. So I'm hoping I get enough time, to drive a car.
Mr. Dhoni, looking at the electric versus the diesel petrol versions, you said you would like to drive the electric version for a period of time before you can judge that electrical is as good as petrol and diesel. The whole world is going towards the electrical, and we all know the world is, there are timelines 2030, 2035 that most of the world is going to be taken over by the electrical vehicle. So, what makes you feel that electrical vehicle, the drivability or all the components of driving, you are a SUV lover, what makes you think SUV of electric versus petrol and diesel? Your preliminary experience, how do you think about it?
Well, the answer is very simple, because if you're a motorhead, engine is something that is very important because it gives you a feel about the vehicle. When it comes to the interiors and everything, you can put in the best of interiors. You can put what you want. You may have the best multimedia, but is that the car? Or the car is actually the chassis and the engine and how it's handling? One of the fact of life is going ahead at some point of time, you'll only see electric vehicles or greener forms of vehicle, whether it is hydrogen driven or something else, new technology comes in. But I feel most of the people who love cars, they'll always drive the electric or whatever comes in the future, but they'll always say one thing, I'm missing that feel of a car that only comes with an engine, whether it's a diesel or an electric. When it comes to performance, there's something that we all know, when it comes to performance of the electric motor and all, it has a lot of torque. Right from standstill, it gives you a lot of torque. So all the supercar makers, they have been struggling saying, okay, putting in a lot of R&D, we are putting in a lot of research, to break that barrier of saying, okay, 0 to 100 in less than 3 seconds, less than 2.5 seconds. But with an electric motor and research, it is easily possible. Most of the car manufacturers will be like, that is something that can be achieved. But it's all about the feel. And one thing is for sure, you will stop seeing them in the future. What I mean is the internal combustion engine at some point of time. So when the moment is right, I really want to enjoy it. I have it, so I would rather enjoy it at this point of time, because if I'm alive and 2050, we are sitting in a similar, once they grow up, it will be very difficult for them to understand what is an internal combustion engine, because they would be driving the electric vehicles, so they may not know something that we have gone through. A lot of them youngsters, they won't know about the cassette player. What is a cassette player? Pen drive, floppy disk. So, future, there may not be, petrol engine cars available. So I think it's something that needs to be enjoyed, but it's important to be very responsible also. Not to forget, I feel the electric vehicle is not the solution. How the electricity is produced is the solution. If my electric is still coming from a thermal power plant, we can't say, okay, it's green. So what is important is to generate electricity, that is greener, and to have other sustainable things, that is around when it comes to the energy aspect.
Good evening, Mahi sir. I am a great fan of yours. The question that I would like to ask you is that what are the features that you miss in this car? Like, I suppose you have driven a lot of cars, and what are the things that you think that this car should have? Like,
to answer that first, I need to get really into the car. For me, I'm not somebody, so when I'm driving a car, the music system is not the most important thing. The leather on the chair is not the most important thing. Whether it's ventilated or not, whether the steering has a heated thing or not. So for me, my most important thing is the feel that I get out of the car. Features can be added. You can talk to Mercedes. They'll add whatever you want. You talk about it, they'll put a PlayStation for you. It's not safe, they'll put a PlayStation. But whatever you want can be done. What is important is not the features, the car in itself. So the car is the most important thing. Everything else is an add-on. Like when I meet cricketers, that's what I keep telling them. For us, cricket is the most important thing. Everything around cricket will take care of itself. If we take care of the most important thing, which is cricket, Because in today's world, when I started playing cricket, when I started playing for India, it was 2004. There was no Instagram, there was no Twitter, nothing. Now a lot of people are worried about likes, followers, this, that, but that's not the core subject. As cricketers, we are supposed to try our best, to represent the country and do well. If we take care of that, the followers will take care of themselves, the likes will take care of themselves. So you always need to differentiate. But yes, that is cricket, this is a car, you'll always be spoiled with what all you can get. And I'm definitely sure whatever you want, you'll get in a car. Till you don't want it to fly, it will come in the future, it will fly also.
I have a simple question. For someone like me, who's a regular person, the kind of car I drive is extremely important. Because it kind of speaks about what I want to portray about myself or my image or what I like and dislike. How is it for you, from the position you are, how important could a car be for you?
Well, I think for me, it has always been important to be myself. So I don't think I can be defined by the car or the bike I ride or drive. If I'm a good person, I'm a good person, irrespective of what I'm driving. I may be driving something that is not considered as a gentleman's car, because at the end of the day, if I am a gentleman, they will consider me as a gentleman. So for me, it's not the car. If I want to enjoy a car or a bike, I will enjoy it. Because every car has something different to offer, and why not explore it? So I don't bound myself with that. When it comes to car, I like cars, that perform, but they don't have the same hype around it. So they may look simple like some other car, but they have performance under the bonnet. That's the kind of person I am.
Mahi, we have a small fan on your left.
Raise your hand.
Right in front of the stage. Right.
Oh, there you go.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm a very big fan of yours. So the question which I wanna ask you is, which is the most memorable cricket match you have ever played?
Well, there are lots of matches that we have played, that we remember throughout our life. But if you talk about moments, so when I talk about it, a lot of people say, oh, it must be the 2007 World Cup or the 2011 World Cup or 2013 or some other moment. And I always say, no, it's not that. It was actually 15, 20 minutes before we won the 2011 World Cup. So this was in Wankhede. the whole stadium was singing Vande Mataram. I don't get goosebumps for some odd reason, I don't know why, but literally my ear, they were moving. And those 15, 20 minutes, I feel that was the moment it would be very difficult to recreate unless some other stadium in India, we are playing the finals, we have a very good chance of winning, and they start doing it. Because when it comes to the national anthem, if you see our national anthem, we cannot scream, we cannot shout, we cannot raise the voice because there's a pitch to it. But with Vande Mataram, you can do that. And if you imagine 35, 40,000 people at their emotional best and emotional high, shouting it, singing it, I feel that was the best moment.
After you become successful in cricket and you bought your first Mercedes, sir, how was your feeling after buying it?
There were a lot of cars before that.
Okay.
Because even when you are successful, there's a gradation in life. Gradation in the sense, I come from a middle class background. So once you get the money, you want to make your home first. Times have changed. Now people want their car first. But for us, the home was more important. So it came much later in life, and there were so many cars before it. So I don't know how to actually answer your question, but it was a pleasure once I got my first luxury car.
As I recall, in an interview I had heard when Ronaldo was asked how many cars does he have, he didn't have an answer. Do you have the count of how many cars you have?
I don't know the exact number. I have quite a few, but I'm more into the vintage cars. So I love the old cars. I see a lot of people with gray beard and less hair. So they would agree with me that, the time when everything was more solid, even the bumpers used to be steel, the engine was more raw, that was the time, the character of the car was very strong. So I'm born in 81, but I think I'm slightly older when it comes to liking of the cars, So I love those big cars, may or may not have big engine, but very strong on the outside. The suspension were not great, but the seat had so much cushion that you hardly felt the potholes. So, that's how I am.
Sir, and I'm a die-hard CSK fan, hoping for a win this year.
We'll try our best.
Hey, Mahi. I'm a great fan of yours. So I know you're a big bike lover, right? So do you think Mercedes should get into the bike world?
I was hoping someone would ask that question.
It's a very difficult one to crack. It's easier to drive on 4 wheels than 2 wheels. But I feel everybody specializes at, things. I'm very happy with what they are doing. So let's leave the bikes to the bike people. And as you rightly said, I love bikes, I love motorcycles, and I love old two-stroke bikes, which it's very difficult to find nowadays. But yeah, when it comes to the biking aspect, right from the 50s, I feel, the bikes are something that is, for the West, it is often considered as fun and adventure. But when it comes to India, it's more to commute. You don't buy a bike, oh, we want to go, on a bike ride or something. Basically, you're going from place A to place B, which may be home to school or home to college. So bike actually is a very important aspect of all our lives in India.
Amazing. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. Mahi, thank you so much. You answered all the questions so candidly. I absolutely loved doing this with you. Thank you so much. You can head out.